Hello friends, Tanya here for Trinity Stamps, and today is day 4 of the sneak peeks for the February release. I'm playing with 2 items here, a stamp set called A Good Friend and a Stencil Clover heart. I'm going to start out by coloring some of these clovers with some Copic markers. I did a close-up of the Copics I used today, and I'm starting with the darker tone, and I'm going to come back with the lighter tone. The main images of this stamp set are these cute little clovers. There are 2 3-leaf clovers and 1 4-leaf clover, and they all have coordinating dies. Love that about the Trinity stamp sets. There are no coordinating dies for the sentiments in this stamp set, but I think you're going to love the sentiments. I did create a whole pile of these beautiful little clovers, and I'm so excited to show you what I've done and how I've used these clovers. There is also a blog post on the Trinity blog with some project ideas there also today. Make sure you check that out. And I want to make sure that you stretch your imagination with how you would use clovers. Now these are very vibrant green. I love that. It has a very spring feel to me. And I think you're going to find you could use these clovers year round. Here's my pile of colored and cut out clovers. Now I did go back and stamp those again after I colored them with the help of my Misty. Next, I'm taking some Twisted Citron and Mowed Lawn ink, and I'm ink blending an A2 sized panel with both of these, getting a nice blend in between, and you'll see what I'm going to do with those in a little bit. I did need to re-ink my ink pads. I say that a lot. I don't actually re-ink my ink pads in large quantity at once. I do it just when they need it. Next, we're going to use the Mini-Slimline Stitched Layers stack. This is great for all of those sentiments that don't have a coordinating die. This quickly cuts them out, and you can use some partial die cutting in order to get the length that you want. Since there's so many different widths, there is bound to be something that will match the sentiment you're trying to die cut if it doesn't have a coordinating die, or if you just purchase your stamp sets without the coordinating dies and you happen to have the Mini-Slimline stitched stack. That's a lot of words, but it will help you stretch your supplies. So we've got both of the components of the sentiment for this stamp set. A good friend is like a 4-leaf clover. Hard to find and lucky to have. Next, we're going to use this heart clover stencil, and I'm using the lunar paste here. I have stenciled that beautiful heart shape and let that dry, and then I'm going to use some glue. Always have the Crafty Gluefriend that you can use, which I'm allergic to, and I am going to use the Barely Art instead. They're both wonderful glues. They both have a great hold and a fine tip. We're going to adhere this to an A2 card base, and then I'm going to use our sentiment that I had gold heat embossed and die cut, and I'm going to use a little bit of scrap cardstock to add a little height behind this and adhere it near the center of our clover heart. I love how that stenciled and created this beautiful main background image. Then we're going to take one of those 4-leaf clovers that I colored and die cut, and we're going to add that to the front of the card also. Just going to trim some scrap pieces of cardstock and tuck that behind. You could use whatever you like for popping this up. I wanted to keep this fairly flat for ease of mailing. I thought I was done here, but not quite. We're going to pull out the Clover cluster embellishments. These are some flat sequin-like materials, and they are so darn cute. I was just going to add one to the center of this 4-leaf clover with my pickup stick here. I've got my tidy tray to help make it easier to pick individual pieces up. And then I decided to see what it would look like if I added some of these tiny little clovers into the white space between these stenciled clovers. And I love it. So I go back and I add little clovers all over inside this clover heart. And then I decide to add one right on the actual sentiment banner also. Just one little pop of shine and color to add a little extra interest to that. That turned out so cute. Inside, we're going to add the second half of our sentiment. Again, going to glue that inside. If you're super brave, you can use a stamp block and just stamp on the inside, or use your mini Misty or your full-size Misty. Then I'm going to tuck 3 of these clovers in the upper portion, or yes, the upper portion of the inside of this card. I think that adds a lot of interest and a lot of fun to the inside of our card, and it brings the design from the outside to the inside, which is one of my favorite things to do. So that was card number 1. I have a second card today. We're going to use this Transfer Gel Duo. This lets you do some foiling without special tools. So you use this stencil, or excuse me, use this paste with a stencil, and I let that dry for about an hour. And then I'm using this Deco foil, which I've had in my stash for quite some time now. And these are some scraps of the Emerald watercolor foil. And I'm going to run this through my die cut machine. You can use this with heat in a laminating machine like a Mink or just a regular laminator, or you can use it with the pressure from your die cut machine. And look at how that turned out. Just stunning. I am so delighted with this. Next, I'm taking some ink, some Distress Oxide ink, and I want to color the white space or the negative space in this heart with some of this Shabby Shutters Distress Oxide ink. So I just smush it on some packaging and use my watercolor brush and a little bit of water. I do have to keep adding some ink smushed ink to that packaging to make sure I cover that entire heart. It's a pretty big heart. As you saw on the first card, it does cover an entire A2 size card panel. And this time I'm making a 5x7 card. I've already cut this down with a modern embossed. No, I didn't. This is just a 5x7 piece of cardstock. I did not use the modern embossed layer on this. Did I? I can't remember. Oh, I think I thought about it, but then I didn't want to run it through the the die cut machine again. As you saw, I buffed off the extra ink with just a dry rag. Next, I'm going to take some of my Daniel Smith iridescent watercolors. I'm using a gold, a topaz, and a white, I believe, iridescent watercolors. And I've added just a little bit of water to each of these pans, and I'm cleaning my brush between colors and just spattering that across the entire card front. Now, if I had this to do again, I might have done some ink blending before I did the foiling, just to add a little more interest to this background, but this turned out very well also. I do like the 3 different colors of spatters here. We'll let this dry completely before I add any other pieces. Oh, I did go back and use the Modern Embossed Edge A7 stack and use 2 layers to die cut those. And then I am going to layer a piece of brushed gold paper or cardstock behind that. I'm going to glue my layers together here. I did not add any extra dimension behind this one. Again, trying to move towards more mailing friendly cards. It's a struggle, let me tell you, not to add the extra layers of dimension, because I really think it adds a lot to the card. But sometimes you just let it be. We'll adhere this to the front of the card, and maybe I should have left a wider white border, but this Clover heart is so big. I just wanted to do it justice. Next, we're going to take this Simply Sentimental Hello stamp and die set. Actually, I think I might just use the dies here. I've die cut the fine detail hello and the shadow element, and we're going to adhere those together. I used the same shimmery gold cardstock or brushed gold cardstock and some white, plain white cardstock to do my layering here. Just added a little bit of fine detail glue to the back of the fine detail element and used my reversed tweezers to help me get that placed correctly. And then I'll layer another layer of scrap white cardstock behind that. Now I'm going to set this on our heart and fiddle with that a little bit and add some of those colored and die cut clovers to add extra interest to the front of the card and fill some more of that white space. These are turning out so darn cute. I'm telling you, you're going to love this next release. It is so full of fun and spring and joy. We're going to tuck the ends of these clovers in, and that creates some really cute elements. We're going to pull in the extravagant emerald embellishments. These are a really deep green rhinestone, and we're going to add those to the centers of each of these clovers just to bump up the wow factor a little more. We've got that gorgeous foil. You want the rest of your elements to be equally glamorous. So I'm going to add a scattering of these gems and glue those down. Your precision tip glues are a girl's best friend when it comes to these gems. Just going to add a few more. This is a big card. There's lots of room for embellishments. And if you're anything like me, you have quite the collection. I guess we do use one of the stamps. I'm going to add a sub-sentiment that says Crafty Friend to the front of this card. Just going to use my acrylic block and the VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink to add this to a piece of white cardstock scrap. I did use a heavyweight white cardstock scrap there. I'm going to use some embossing powder, just some clear embossing powder, to add a little extra shine and height to this sentiment. One of my favorite ways to add a sentiment to the front of the card. Plus, it prevents that VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink from smudging. Next, we're going to take a die from the Simply Sentimental U die set. It has this great sentiment banner die that works with all of those sub-sentiments in the Simply Sentimental line. I am so happy I have all of the Simply Sentimental stamps and dies. They are such a great stash staple. So many great sentiments, and I love that they've got several different fonts for the larger portions of the die sets and stamps. We'll get that cut out with a little bit of partial die cutting, so we have banner ends on both ends. Added a little extra bit of cardstock behind that to add that to the front of the card with a little bit of height, and centering that under the letter H in hello. That's the front of our card, and inside is going to get some love also. We're going to take a couple of these clovers, maybe all three. Yes, we're going to adhere them to the inside of the card, very similar to the first card that we did. I'm just going to make sure I center them very nicely and adding them to the inside of the card with a little bit of glue. This is my favorite way to decorate the inside of the card because you don't have any Copic marker coloring showing through to the back of the card. You can place things exactly where you want them with little fuss. Here is that sentiment that is from the same stamp set, and that makes card number 2. Those are all of the cards I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this sneak peek and you're going to be so ready for this to come out on, I believe it's February 7th. There is a sneak peek each day leading up until release day. Don't forget to check the Trinity channel for all of those. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Check that description box below for all of the products that I used today. And until next time, here are a couple more videos we thought you might enjoy. Bye-bye.